Hey guys, welcome to Mitch's Vinyl Corner and thanks for stopping by. I just wanted to do a quick video on some of the purchases that I've made over like the last couple of weeks. So two that you see up here is part of the two of the four that I got from Analog Productions. The other two being Relaxin' and Steamin' with the Miles Davis Quintet, Cookin' and Workin' with the Miles Davis Quintet. So the interesting thing about these four albums was that they all four of these albums contain songs that were recorded during two sessions over 1956. I believe one day in April and then the other one in October. So those songs essentially make up these four albums. So these are considered to be like the best of what Miles Davis did whenever he was part of the Prestige label during this time period. I've only actually listened to Cookin' as of right now. It sounds absolutely amazing. I haven't gotten around to the other three yet, but all four of these are still available on the Acoustic Sounds website. So these three were cut at QRP by Analog Productions, Acoustic Sounds, and were all mastered from the original master tapes, mono master tapes by Kevin Gray, these three. And then Working with the Miles Davis Quintet was also cut by Kevin Gray from the original mono master tapes, but it's part of the OJC revival series that Craft Recordings has done. Another solid, fantastic reissue label when it comes to jazz, especially. So there's also a fifth album that could be added to the great prestige work that Miles Davis did, which is actually the album called Miles, which I'll put a picture of it up here. That one just got reissued by OJC / Craft Recordings actually this week. All analog, Kevin Gray mastering from the original mono master tape. So I just don't have that one yet. Eventually I'll get it to complete, like the great Miles Davis prestige work. So really, really happy with these four. All still available from the Acoustic Sounds website. So the next purchase I got was back on Saturday from Yellow Dog Disc in Wilmington, North Carolina. If you're from the area, really, really good record store there. So I saw this one, and I actually owned this at one time. So this is Get Back by the Beatles. So this was actually in the Let It Be box set that came out, I believe, maybe 2-3 years ago. It's part of the 50th anniversary of the Let It Be album and the Get Back movie that Peter Jackson did, which was on Disney Plus. Really great miniseries. Really, really good if you haven't seen it. So this is actually the Glenn Johns mix of what would be eventually come to be his Let It Be. It was actually never officially released, but they wanted to showcase this album within that box set. It had been heavily bootlegged for years. I'd owned a bootleg of it at one point. Really didn't sound really good. It sounded like shit, but it was a cool piece of history to have. But this definitely cleans up the bad edits. It's all cleaned up and everything. And this is what would have been officially released if the Beatles had approved the Glenn Johns mix. So this mix is definitely rough around the edges, which I actually like. If you're familiar with the Let It Be album that was officially released and that pretty much everyone's familiar with, that version was actually done by Phil Spector. So Phil Spector added a lot of like orchestra involvement, a lot of overdubs, and I get it. A lot of people love that album. I'm not here shitting on it, but I actually prefer the Get Back version over the Let It Be version. Some of the same songs, just different mixes of it, and they're just a little bit more raw, and they're not overdubbed. Before some of the tracks, you can actually hear some of the Beatles chatting back and forth, which I think is really, really, really cool. The album Let It Be, I think, did some of that. in between some of the songs, but it's a little bit more present here, which I like. There's a couple tracks on here that didn't make it onto the Let It Be album, which I think kind of sucks. I could have done without Across the Universe that's on the Let It Be album. I hate that song. I really don't like it at all. I know a lot of people love it. There was the movie that it was based off of. I mean, the movie Across the Universe is actually pretty good. But when I want to hear Let It Be, actually, quote unquote, I always go back to the Get Back version. Now, the only way that you can actually really get this officially is within that Let It Be box set that I'd mentioned. But I'd sold that, and I was actually going to keep just this disc out of it, but when I was selling it, the guy really wanted it, so I thought that would have been not fair to the guy if I would have taken that album out of there and kept it for myself and kind of sold it. So sold the whole thing, saw this yesterday, pretty much rebought it, and I'm very happy with it. And this is the version of Let It Be that I feel like actually should have been released, in my opinion. A lot of people might disagree, but I know a lot of people probably would agree with me. So yesterday, my wife and I went up to Raleigh just to spend the day up there. It was a beautiful day. It was really great. We stumbled upon the Hunky Dory record shop. Well, we didn't stumble upon it. One of the main reasons why we went up there because I wanted to go up there. I wanted to go to this record store, which I had been to before. If you're in the Raleigh area, you're near there, I highly recommend going to this record shop. It's really cool, really good vibe, really good staff. They actually have beer on tap there, so you can drink some beer while listening to your records or actually shopping for some records. So that's a really hey, sign me up. Have a couple beers, listen to some good records. Hey, I'm all in. But I'd been there previously. I'd been there almost a year ago. It was the last time I was up there. And I noticed that they had a really good selection of used Blue Note stuff. I'd actually bought one of my Art Blakey Monin jazz records up there. I actually bought a 1960 mono deep groove from them up there. It was a little banged up, but I got it for a good price. I got it for a real fair price. It sounds fantastic. I love it. So I knew that this guy, the owner, had a lot of good Blue Notes up there. So I talked to one of the staff, and we got to talking, and she had brought down a couple of the ones that I had seen up on the wall. I kind of looked at the condition, and there was actually one Freddie Hubbard album going up. If you're, jazz bums, if you're watching, you guys are probably the Jazz Basement. If you guys are watching this video, you guys are probably familiar with that record. Highly sought after, has not been reissued yet. He had an original mono deep groove there, but it was way too expensive and I couldn't buy it. But I'd stumbled upon this one, the Horace Silver Quintet and Trio, Blowin' the Blues Away. Now, this has been reissued as part of the Blue Note Classic series, which I've mentioned before. If you're just getting into jazz and you don't want to go spend time or actually spend the money to actually get original Blue Notes, because I have said before, original Blue Notes, especially monos from certain time periods, are a lot of money. Original Blue Notes in general are just, in whichever shape you find them in, they're going to go for a lot of money because they're highly, highly collectible. I'm talking anywhere from, a little under 100, a little over 100 to thousands, and I mean thousands of dollars. I think a copy of John Coltrane's Blue Train, I think recently sold for like 12 grand or something off eBay. I don't know what kind of condition it was in, but that's what Blue Notes, essentially ones that haven't been reissued yet and are highly sought after, that's what they go for. But I saw this original one, this copy in particular, there at that store, and they were kind enough to play it for me on their system. It sounded fantastic. So I had to buy it. I got it for a really good price, pretty much on the cheaper end. Little banged up, but brought it home, put it through the ultrasonic cleaner, played it last night. It sounds incredible. Um, if you can find an original mono of this for a good price, I highly recommend you do it. Or if you don't want to, you'll be very happy from what I've read with the Blue Note Classic reissue of this album. Because it's all analog, cut from the original master tapes by Kevin Gray. So the last one is from yesterday as well. We went to an antique store up there called Father and Son. So I walked in and I'd been looking for this album because this album actually just got reissued on the Blue Note Classic series actually this week. It actually came out. I'd heard a lot of people talking about it. I'd listened to samples on YouTube and I'm like, I got to get this album. But when I went into this antique shop, I saw this on the wall and I immediately rushed over and I'm like, holy shit, is this an original copy? Went on Discogs, looked at it. Yep, it's an original stereo. Because mono versions of this one actually were only given to radio DJs, and I don't think they were actually ever commercially available. And that's what I read on Discogs. So this album was recorded in 1965 and then released in 1968. So it was shelved for a few years before being officially released. I absolutely love this album. I think this is probably number one or number two that Lee Morgan ever did. He had it for pretty much the median price for what it's going for on Discogs. The condition was pretty good. VG, a couple scratches here and there, but nothing that, I don't think would take away from it. Take away from the listening experience in terms of like skips or clicks or pops or anything like that. So the owner saw me actually looking at it, and we got to talking, and we just BSing. And at first he told me, he's like, hey, I'll give you a good price on it. I'll come off a little bit for you. And before I could even make, an offer, we had just been kept chatting, and, after we'd been done talking, we talked about Blue Note, we talked about other reissue series, and I don't know if it was just, he just really appreciated the fact that I was really passionate about this stuff. He actually came down way lower than what I was going to offer him, and I didn't even argue. I shook his hand. I said, hey, brother, you got a deal. Absolutely fantastic. This album is killer. You got Wayne Shorter on here. You got Billy Higgins. The creme of the creme when it comes to jazz musicians from this time period. But I've heard if you can't find an original, you definitely go with the Blue Note Classic series. From what I've read, really good reviews. It really, really sounds good. All right, so those are the purchases that I made over the last couple of weeks. But I really did want to give a shout out to my wife for actually giving me the idea to actually do this video. The next video that's going to be coming next weekend is I'm actually going to go through and give you guys my ultimate wish list of some of the records that are really high up on my wish list, but one, they're either really, really hard to find or they're extremely expensive. But again, you never know. I could stumble upon one, get one for a good price, and hey, get that off my wish list. But I wanted to also give a shout out to the Hunky Dory record shop in Raleigh. If you're there in that area, highly recommend you go there. The staff is incredibly, incredibly well-knowledge, well-versed. They'll actually let you listen to your records either on their system or they actually have a Technics turntable with headphones. You can actually listen to the used records that they have if you're interested in buying them, so you can pretty much make sure that they sound good before you purchase them. And I also wanted to give a shout out to Father and Sons, the antique shop, was more specifically Father and Son Vintage Vinyl on Instagram for helping you get that Lee Morgan record, which, again, fantastic. really, really happy with that purchase because it's one that I've been after for a while. But I hope that everybody had a great Labor Day weekend. Stay safe out there. Thank you all for stopping by. I'll see you all next time.